tech in 2003, 2004. And it was starting to be a little bit of a drag. I was doing a lot of business travel, and on all of my travels I was picking up pottery books and magazines and reading them on the airplanes back and forth. And it was sort of getting into me that, hey, maybe this is the direction that I need to go in more permanently, and also while I still have youth and energy was the thought. And so right around 2004 I decided to take the leap and get out of high tech and try being a full-time potter for a while. So I did do that. It was very exciting. I was learning about production pottery and making dinnerware and things like that, and doing art fairs and shows, about seven to 10 shows a year, and had good fun with that. But I was also teaching. I started in with Mother Earth and had been teaching at Blossom Hill Crafts concurrently, and Mother Earth, and decided that over time that was what I really liked the most. I liked the shows, but I also liked having the classes, working with people, which is what I did in high tech. So I was a big technical instructor, courseware developer for a lot of software companies. So anyway, that's how I sort of wound my way through these ceramic circles and figured that it was in my destiny to open up a studio. And it wasn't until the great real estate crash of 2008 in commercial real estate that all sort of became possible and started to look likely in this location. So this turned out to be a great location for me, and I think for the studio in general, because San Jose started a downtown arts district, which is where we eventually decided to locate. I also think it's funny, all the locations that we were looking at, and you'll probably hear this from Black Bean as well, because Black Bean, which you're headed to next, we were all looking at studio locations and sites at about the same time. In fact, when I was looking for studios out on West San Carlos Street and the Alameda, which are some nice areas around here, the agents and brokers would say, you know, I just talked to a couple of guys about starting a pottery studio who looked at this space. And eventually we figured out who we were. They found their space, we found our space. And I think the funny part about all those spaces we were looking at, and the 2 or 3 others that I was really, really serious about, and that tell me that we chose the right place, is that those other places, out of the 3, I think 2 out of 3 are now medical marijuana places, and the 3rd is a tattoo parlor. And so it's nice that we finally landed here among the South First Arts District and not at those other places, which would have been significantly cheaper, but were not in as great a spot, even though they offered a lot of space. So
you have a sense of community here.
We have a sense of community here. We're part of a monthly art walk. We have glass and glass classes happening next door. We have San Jose Stage across the street. We have MACLA, the Quilt Museum, Institute of Contemporary Art, all within footsteps, and this cool new park happening across the street. So I don't know if you noticed all the construction, but the city of San Jose just received a $500,000 grant to build an outdoor urban living room. And so they're expanding what was known as Core Park into a place where people can come in the afternoons and evenings and on weekends to do various art-making activities and have it be an extension of their downtown abode as an outdoor urban living room. So I don't really know what that means yet. I keep hearing the term, but there are organizations in the downtown that are going to be doing a lot of programming and event making for the space. And so we're hoping that we can use it for things like outdoor pit firing, other kinds of alternative firings out there, and have it be an extension of our space as well.
That's
so
right over here.
it's directly across the street where you see all of the chain link fences and construction going on. It already was a park, and it was kind of a cute, nice looking park, but what they've done is they're closing off South First and expanding the park all the way through the street that had been South First, so they're closing that off and making it sort of combination pedestrian mall and park.
That's exciting.
So, which is cool. Yeah.
So what was the space in before?
All right, so this space before, many, many years ago, was an auto dealership, and then it was S&G Carpet, and for a long time S&G had this building, and then before we took over this building. It was a glass window manufacturing company. So our space, back in 2009, 2010 when we were getting going, had some drop ceilings in it. It was basically an open shell. We had no real restrooms. We had no real running water. We had one electric panel over here with some outlets. And we were doing First Fridays in August of 2010 as our first Friday with everything from one 4-plug outlet with nothing else going on in the building. So our renovations included heating, new roof, heating and air conditioning, insulation, new restrooms, a kiln room. We had to have PG&E bring natural gas to the building so that we could have our gas kiln get installed. And new ADA, American Disability Act, entries and exits and all of the compliance. So we are fully permitted and fully compliant with everything that we need to be in order to be both a retail art gallery and a teaching space.
So I guess you had to work with the contractor and everything to
We did
figure
a
out.
major renovation here, yeah. And
Yeah.
we worked with a contractor and an architect to get all that done.
Was there any unexpected things that happened for this?
Well, I mean, there always are.
But I mean-
Actually, looking back, I mean, it took us roughly 4 to 6 months to get the entire renovation done, which was initially promised as no more than 8 weeks. Our permitting process before that, to get the permits, which we thought would only be a couple of months, took 6 months just to get the permits and the permission to do what we wanted to do. So those were all surprises, but in looking at other businesses in the downtown and how difficult San Jose can be to work with, we actually got it done relatively quickly in hindsight. But at the time, it felt like, are we ever going to be able to fire this kiln that's been in the building for a whole year? What is going on? And the inspectors were coming over and saying, well, that doesn't really meet the requirements for the kinds of boilers that we've seen before. And I said, well, it's not a boiler, it's a kiln. So, even with the inspectors, there was an education process. At any rate, we're here, things are firing beautifully, and it's been running for almost 2 years as of October 2010 with classes.
How did you decide on the layout since you had an empty shell?
So, layout-wise, we are substantially different than what we initially thought we would be. So I patterned the initial layout quite a bit after what Mother Earth was doing in terms of having a separate member space and then having a classroom space, a library space, a kitchen space, and all these different spaces. And over time, our first charter members in the first 6 months, they would come in week to week and see things rearranged. And part of that was due to inspectors and inspections that were ongoing while we were running class, and they would say, no, you have to have this over here or this over here. But a lot of it was due to how functionally people were using the studio. So you don't know a lot of times how it's going to turn out until people are in and using the space and seeing where they want to be. So initially we thought members would want their own space. We did that in this area back here, which is now the glaze area, as a separate shelving, wheels, everything the members would need. And what we found is that they all wanted to work up front by the windows. So floor-to-ceiling windows at the front provide all this natural light. You can see out on clear days. You're looking at the hills and blue sky. You're looking at palm trees. And people walk by and they see you and they look in the window and they're interested. So, so that turned out to be no need for a member-specific working space. Just get everybody up front and working. We did actually, I'm just going to walk this way, but we may as well move along. We did set up a separate member area for storage. So all of these shelves in through here, including the rolling carts in the middle, each of these shelves corresponds to one member. So when you're a member in the studio, you get your own 4 foot by 1.5 foot shelf space by about a foot tall. And we're up to about 85 members and maybe about 70 students. So closing in on about 150 people working in the studio, something like that. And we have firing members. So if we count firing members, we're up to another maybe 8 to 10 people. So those are folks who do all their work at home, but come in for bisque and glaze and raku firings. And so this area is growing. This used to be, before we had as many members, this was also a combined gallery space, and we used to have the outer shelves with display and work for sale, but now we need it for member storage. Before these racks were in the middle, we had tables in here as a separate hand building area for members, but we need that space for storage now. And so we do all of our hand building out this way. So let's go pick it up. We started off with 8 wheels in October 2010, went to 12 wheels about 3 months later when it appeared our classes were actually going to fill up and people were responding well, and then to a total of 18 wheels by April of 2011. So April of 2011 was an interesting time for us. We had Palo Alto Arts Center closing down for renovations, and people like Joe Badiato and Pixie Couch looking for places to bring their followings, and we were more than happy to accommodate them. So we grew to 18 wheels at that point. We constructed some tables to go in between the wheels to give people a little bit more room to spread out and work, and expanded this area and expanded our freshly grown pot shelving to a little bit larger area. We also at that point decided that Jill Getson, she wanted to teach hand building more or less full time, and her classes from CSMA were starting to come here as well, because CSMA is a one clay body, mid-range and low fire studio, and we are a 25 glaze high fire studio, which is a bit different. So we dedicated this area to hand building, and now run regular hand building classes in here with anywhere from 14 to 16 people in them around these tables. So we have all the usual studio equipment, so tons of bats for people to share, plastic and boards. Like Blossom Hill, we do the pot wrapping for students. We're sort of getting to the point where we can't do that for everybody, and so we're asking members to do their own pot wrapping. But for students, it's nice because they come in for a class, they don't have to manage the wet pot to 11 hard stage, and they can come in the next week and trim and not worry about it. So all of these carts along the side are class carts for the various classes that go on, and those are places where there's in progress. We have all the usual stuff: extruder on the wall, hand building tools and texture mats and forms over here, hand building boards, extruder extension box for hollow forms, a wedging table behind us. We have a little bit of history in the studio too, which is nice. So there's a little flavor that comes from other studios. This table came from Clay Planet, who inherited it from Ed Sherry. And so we were trekking up to San Carlos to pick up some of our shelving from Ed Sherry Ceramics. This table was his glaze mixing table for a lot of years. It's a hand building table. We picked up a few wheels on auction. All our Brent wheels are basically from Sunnyvale. That's from Community Center, because at the time they had money to buy new wheels every 7 years. I don't think they're doing that anymore. And this wedging table is also from Sunnyvale Community Center. We're told that they miss it because it's a good height. And then there are a lot of things that we picked up ourselves. So a lot of our wooden shelving that you see around the studio came from the closure of Mervyn's over on Hamilton Avenue. When they closed and finally liquidated all their store fixtures, this wooden shelving that you see came from their stock room. And they had a stock room the size of our building, but 2 floors, so 5,000 square feet times 2. Just wall to wall and center aisles with all of this stockroom shelving. And we only found out about it on the last day before they were going to demolish the building. So, my partner and I drove over there with a rented van, and it was take as much as you can for $15 a unit of shelving with as many shelves as you want to take. And so we picked up as much as we could in our van, and then that was it. It was over. So if we'd only known earlier.
And shelving's so expensive too.
It is, it is. I mean, well, the lucky part is you can go to Costco and get the rolling cart for $99, and they are great. But we love the look of the wood shelves. We had sandblasted the ceiling, and so we have this nice open, rafter area to match and to play with visuals. We do a lot of reclaiming of clay. So you can see in the middle here, this innovation is a trimming and slop wagon. So basically it's a garden cart from Lowe's. So the important part about reclaiming for us is that we are able to collect up people's trimmings and slop and then transport it over to where our clay mixer is. And we turn that up and create reclaim, and we sell reclaim for half price, basically. And there's some important warnings on here. We initially didn't have all these warnings on here, but you can imagine the kinds of things that we find in the clay. And it's a little frightening to think that people could lose, carving tools and needle tools in their slot that they do. And then the worst one now is most people don't end up, we still see chamois, we still see the occasional sponge, but newbies have to be told in no uncertain terms that there is no bisqueware or glazedware that goes in here because it cannot be reclaimed, which we all know, right? We've been doing this for a while, but
Basic science.
Yeah. So twice a week we roll the wagon in, and we have a feeder pugger, mixer, deer, and pug mill in the back that turns out 120 pounds at a time.
Do you have one person whose job it is to do that, or do you let members do that?
Yeah, we have studio staff now who do that, and I still do that once a week. So I love making reclaim clay.
But do you have low fire and high fire and other?
We are a high fire studio, so we don't really allow low fire clay in the studio other than on a case-by-case basis with lots of permission and marking where it's from and what it's supposed to be doing. So we only sell high fire clay here, and we want people only to use high fire clay here. So there's a certain amount of flexibility that I think we give people, and we want to really be reasonable and let people do what they want to do. But bringing in mid-range clay or I've actually not turned down, but I've told members that we may not be, prospective members, that we may not be a good fit for them if what they want to do is cone 5, cone 6 mid-range. Because it's too hard. We have the electric kiln to do it, but we don't have the glaze supply. We don't have someone to load those kilns. We would be renting the kiln instead of, so there's all this special stuff that would go on top of that, so we'd rather have folks explore their way through what we do best, which is the raku and the high fire content reduction. We are doing content oxidation now for a group of people who want to do that with underglazes and clear top glaze, and they want to explore what their various porcelains look like at more of a cone 9, cone 10 range. In our regular firings, we do cone 11 just about. So cone 11 is soft and just starting, which is where we finish up our regular firings. So, there's a little interest in some other things, and so we support that where we can.
So are you ever considering like having soft firings or anything?
What we've done with soda firings is work with San Jose State. So we've had 3 soda firings now with San Jose State. We open up that opportunity to members, and we say, hey members, Joe Badigato is going to host a soda firing. It's going to cost you, $45, but you're going to get a 12 by 24 shelf that you can fill. And we tell them what the recommended clays are, which glazes are going to work. We went through a process where we tested all of our glazes in the San Jose State soda kiln to see what they would do, what things look like, and so we had a whole box of samples, and then 6 at a time members can sign up for that and go to a soda firing. And we've done that basically once every 2 to 3 months for the last 9 months. So that's a nice thing, right? You have the opportunity to do it. It's less than a mile from here. You don't have to go very far. We've also partnered up with Phil Park up in the East Hills. So we had a delegation from Higher Fire that participated in his last big Onagama firing, and people brought in some pieces. We used the right clay bodies. We did the glazing, loading, and firing and unloading process with him. And so we have a few students who are now hooked on that, and they'll continue to do that. And a few of us who were like, I participated, like, this is a lot of work for
Staying up all night?
yeah, it's it's 4 days, round the clock shifts, and everybody has to do at least 1 or 2 shifts a day. So it's a long haul to do wood firing.
It's like having an infant.
Huh?
It's like having an infant.
Yes. So I think there's a November firing that's coming up, and they also do monthly salt and soda, wood salt soda firings up there. So if you get it in, because it's kind of the secret society, it's a nice group of people to work with. The gallery shelving in the middle of the studio to showcase work from our teachers and members and others. So right now we have work from Sean Feltz, who teaches Thursday nights. We have work from Sheba Solomon, her dinnerware, which was in the OVCAG dinnerware show, is out still. Work from Lee Middleman, who's been in our gallery for a while. I have some bigger pots from Matt Hoagland on the other side. Donna Hills, who's a member and instructor here. Linda Mao, who has taught with us, is on display. Jill Getson, of course. Joe Battiato. So a lot of our instructors and member folks have worked out. This is Christina Martin. So one of the best things that I've done all year is to hire Christina Martin, who's been our Thursday morning instructor, as a studio coordinator. We have, usually this is our area for glazed work that is ready to be loaded. Our kiln is a 40 cubic foot Bailey gas kiln. Great kiln, very even firing. We fire it twice a week, and we do one bisque load that loads every Sunday with Frank, and he's loading right now. We do a glaze load that loads every Wednesday. Usually Shin Chen Lin, who teaches Wednesday nights, loads our kiln before class. He's amazing. You can watch videos of Shin loading our kiln. He gets a 40 cubic foot kiln loaded in just about 3 hours, all by himself. That's like 200 to 300 pieces, and it's a lot of work to load the kiln. When I load it with Christina, it takes us 4.5 hours together. And last week, it was 2 other people loading it. They took 6 hours to load the kiln. So Shin is amazing, both as an instructor and glaze mixer and kiln loader. We usually get 3 to 4 carts loaded in a glaze load. We do the same. We keep our greenware in the kiln room that's ready to be bisque fired. We keep 4 carts in there. Sometimes we go to 5 carts for a very, very heavy full bisque load. The gas kiln is proving to be probably the biggest asset to the studio in terms of efficiency and firing capability. So we're busy pondering right now whether we get a second gas kiln as we expand to more people, or try to go to 3 firings a week. So the logistics of 3 firings a week is, it's hard to keep pace with that, because the kiln takes time to heat up and it takes time to cool down, and then you have to have people magically at the right moment to load and unload. And so going to three a week in one kiln seems like it's not a good idea to me, logistics-wise, but cost-wise, it's better than getting another kiln. So we're playing with that and trying to figure out what we want to do, and whether we want to grow to be 200 students and members, or whether we want to stay at about 140 to 150. Because 140 to 150, we can get by with our existing firing schedule, and we go through peaks and valleys in terms of the number of pieces that we're firing based on when classes are running. So, but anyway, that's my
So where would you
My
put
thing.
this next kiln?
Well, we actually have room right next door to it, and we could put another kiln in here and figure that out. So, hi Frank. Frank is loading bisque. Wave to the nice people. So right where I have my electric kiln over here, we could move a lot of the things that are out and put a second gas kiln in there. And I think that's where we were probably headed.
Yes, kiln.
I'm hoping the lifespan of the kiln is 10 to 15 years. The cost of the Bailey kiln is about $36,000, and it's been a wonderful kiln, but we don't want to have to rush into another one. And so that's kind of the decision that we're making now. We can also, now that we're up and running and fully permitted, we can probably get a slightly different kiln for a little bit less, and put it in and plumb it into a similar venting scenario. Anyway, that is our interest and future is figuring out the kiln there. Over this way, we have our glazing spa. So as you walk through here, what you're going to see are roughly 25 to 26 cone tan glazes. We have all the usual suspects, things like a nice Temaku, a beautiful iron red called Berry Rust. We have some of our own inventions in here. Norwegian Wood is one of our studio glazes. Silky White, which is a gorgeous cone tan white glaze that does all manner of interesting things over and under other glazes. It's been a mainstay. We have some glazes that we like from Clay Planet, including Smoky Blue and Matt's Flambe. We have some glazes that are in vogue across the country, like Yellow Salt, which is a beautiful buttery yellow. Laura's Turquoise. We have samples for all of our glazes on the light and dark body just above the glaze. We organize on each glaze a green or a red ticket that tells students and members, hey, Matt and Runny, beware, red, danger, okay, with a recommended dip count. Or Matt and Stable, green means go. You can dip it 2 to 4 seconds and you're fine. Ammo white. So all of the glazes get marked with recommended uses and what works for them. We're in the middle, almost toward the end of a project to do all glaze overlaps. So they're all in boxes, but we have Chun Plum over Laura's Turquoise and Laura's Turquoise over Chun Plum on separate tiles waiting to go up. And that's like more than almost 600 tiles to go up.
Those would be on boards on the wall?
They're going to be on boards. Actually, we're going to mount them right underneath the skylight, so they'd be a natural light in between the 2 restroom doors. So we'll take our bulletin board down and do it over there. So that's been kind of fun because tons of stuff pops out at you when you layer glazes, right? And that's sort of the magic of glaze. So anyway, this is our separate glaze area. We also stock underglazes in about 10 different colors that we've tested to be the same color at cone 10 reduction that they are as advertised, and a number of stains. We have a lot of people using underglaze and stain. And then back this way, finishing us up with the tour of firings, we have our raku glazes and some low fire glazes for raku on the cart. And every Sunday, courtesy of members Stacy M and Joyce Knizovic, we run a raku. So I'm going to walk you guys out here. This is my favorite demo pot for raku. It's a little pesky, but this is a Dandermer sodium silicate pot. And we said, why don't we go ahead and stripe it with all the different raku glazes, and we've labeled it with a glaze pencil. And so people can see, Pekenberg Bronze versus Lemon Luster, Matte Rainbow Blue, Abalone, Clear Crackle, Copper Sand, and so on. So you can swing this around the book.
Great way to do samples.
Yeah, it's fun. We recently had an Elaine Pinkernell workshop in here, so we've been having people complete their 2D raku wall pieces, and we've been stocking some extra black and bright red glazes for low fire. Low fire glazes work really, really well in raku and are fun to integrate for all kinds of special events. So this is where we do raku. We have a Laguna raku kiln with a counterweight system, and when we're rakuing, we do open up our roll-up door here at the back a little bit, and the one at the front as well. And right where you see the red line, this is where we line up all the reduction chambers. So we store those up here and have all the various raku, accoutrement, all that stuff, gloves and tongs and everything for people to do raku. Members get to raku, members and students every Sunday. So if they want to, and that's all included in the price of the play. And this has been a reliable little beast for a while. So it took us a little while to figure this kiln out. We actually use kind of a neat system. Up here is a flexible gas hose. Okay, so we are a natural gas facility. Natural gas is the cheapest way to go in terms of providing that kind of fuel versus propane. Propane is harder to do in a city location because propane needs to be in a tank. The tank has to have space around it and concrete bollards. Natural gas is cheaper. It comes into the building, and as long as you have a good supply of it, you can run almost everything on natural gas, and it's way, way, way cheaper than propane and unbelievably cheaper than electricity. So what I found with our big gas kiln is that we fire the gas kiln for just a few dollars more than it takes to fire the electric.
That's
In
impressive.
pure cost.
That's impressive.
Okay, and the gas kiln is 4 times the size. So anyway, we hooked this up, and there's just a nice little connector on the back of the kiln. And we'll do our firing here. When the firing is done, we store the hose, and if you notice, the raku kiln is on wheels. It goes back right into this little pocket over here. And during the week, we usually have 1 or 2 people parked in here, cars or something. But if a raku is going on, we leave this area open. And this is a door to the Glass Art Center next door, and they let us open up this into their backyard whenever we have a raku fire. We also have a spray booth back here with air compressor. The spray booth comes from San Jose State, another historical item. And then another famous OVCAG member. Clay mixer, Peter Pugger, de-airing mixer Pugger is right over here. This is where we do our reclaim, and this is something that I actually had from when I had my own private studio at home. I bought this about 10 years ago and decided that the thing that I had heard most from production potters is do everything you can to save your wrists. And so wedging is a major deal with clay and major stress on your wrists. So I had this for all of my reclaiming and wedging, and I would mix up. When it was my own studio, all I used was B-Mix. And so all of my trim and scrap and whatever, as it's getting made, goes right in the hopper. And then I would throw in fresh clay with it and mix up a very soft version of B-Mix that was completely de-aired and pugged and centered like that because it's soft. And then you could go and you make your 24 mugs in a couple of hours because the clay just quickly centers and you do your pulls and off you go. If it's fresh out of the bag, usually Laguna clays are quite a bit firmer. And so it's hard on your wrists and hard on your body when you have to center hard clay. Occasionally we'll get a hard bag of clay and I'll try to help students and it's like, oh man, this is way too much work for you and me. So anyway, the powder mixer is nice. We also use it for custom clay blends. So people who want to use certain clays, like we find our reduction firing is too intense for cinnamon from Clay Planet or too intense for sandstone buff as clays. But if you take 2 or 3 bags of those and dilute them with a bag of B-Mix or glacia or some other white clay, you can create your own custom blend where you get a similar clay that tolerates the reduction firing and doesn't have any black pouring issues. So that is a really good question. Have we realized the goals of the studio? I think we have. We've really gotten a lot of people sooner and faster and hooked on higher fire than I ever thought. In some ways, it's a great problem to have, but it's been challenging in terms of the pace of the studio. So I think that we're going to continue to add people and members and staff to try and support all of that, to keep it sustainable. So the hard part is balancing as you look at the back end of the business. Our biggest costs are energy and glazed materials and the building itself, but now right up there it's staff. And so, which didn't used to be a big cost at all because it was just me and I'm not on salary and all of that. So that's going to be the fun part going forward, is figuring it all out, and then for myself, getting back to making my own work on a regular basis. So, but I think it'll sustain, and I think that what's going to happen is there'll be a progression of more people involved as members who are going to take charge of certain things and keep our staff costs down. So that's kind of how is parking in downtown San Jose? It's terrible, which is why we have our own lot now. We now rent a 15-space lot from Tate Family Auto, which, you know, we're at $4.99 South Market, they're at $4.77. It's literally the business right next door to the Glass Art Center. So we do that for students and members. They can park there Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's totally free. We pay for it as a studio, and that allows people to come to our studio and not worry about, am I going to get a ticket or do I have to feed the meter, which is a drag. Nobody wants to do that while you're trying to be creative. So yes, and then after 6 p.m., all of this space around us is the meters shut off, the loading zones are fair game, the 10-minute zones are all fair game, so evenings and weekends, it's fairly easy to be around here. During the day, you have to use our lot.